Welcome back to Gathering Folds. Today we're going to be folding this pattern, not quite this much of it, which is called Hybrid Hexagon Weave. And this is one of the very first patterns that I designed that uses hybrid hexagon twists. So one of the cool things about this pattern is that it uses the hybrid hexagon twist, the open hexagon twist, and the closed hexagon twist all in the same pattern. And we're going to take a look both at the tiling of this pattern, which is the standard hexagons and triangles alternating tiling, but colored in a different way so you see the symmetry points in different positions. Each of our triangle twists actually has all three different hexagons on the three different pleats. So that's something that I haven't shown before in the hexagons and triangles six-fold tiling here on my YouTube tutorials. So I want to start out by looking at the tiling and the crease pattern. So whenever I'm talking about tilings and crease patterns, these are two different ways of looking at an origami tessellation pattern. The crease pattern is the more specific way of looking at an individual pattern, where you see where each fold is going to eventually go in the folded pattern. The tiling is a more general way. It describes a lot of different crease patterns. And here we're looking at the shapes, how the shapes are connected, and the colors. And the colors are what are giving us hints about the symmetries of the pattern. So in this case, I could have chosen to color all the hexagons the same way, color all the triangles the same way, and have just one hexagon and one triangle in the broader pattern. But here you can see I have three different colors of hexagon and two different colors of triangle, which means that I'm going to have three different hexagon twists and two different triangle twists in the pattern. And I can also see those positions of threefold rotational symmetry, where there's three of the same thing off of the various sides of these three different hexagons. And that goes for the triangles as well, in addition to the next hexagons over. And that actually continues infinitely. That's a characteristic of patterns that repeat infinitely. You're going to be able to find certain positions of rotational symmetry that comply with one of the 17 wallpaper tiling groups. Or wallpaper symmetry groups, to be more precise. So here we have a triangular type symmetry overlaid onto a structure that is a hexagon surrounded by 6 triangles, and each triangle is surrounded by 3 hexagons. So the underlying structure could support 6-fold rotational symmetry, but here we're just using 3. So I'm going to come back to the paper, and we're going to start folding, and I'm going to shift things around on my screen so I can see if y'all have questions. Feel free to put questions in the chat. And let's go ahead and get started. I have the hybrid hexagon twist in the very center. So we're going to start with folding that particular twist. The first thing I'm going to do is find the center of my paper. Like the description says, I'm using a 48-fold triangle grid on a hexagon, just so we can get some more repeats of this guy. And I'm going to fold my paper in half. Zoom out to show you the particulars. So I'm folding from corner to opposite corner along a grid line, and then I can fold another grid line that's going to a corner, to point me straight to the center. I could also find the center by folding my corner over to the opposite side. And I'm going to be drawing a lot on the paper while I'm folding. You don't necessarily have to, but you do need to know where the center of the paper is. Then I'm orienting my grid so that I have vertical grid lines, just so it matches up with the crease pattern in case you got a screenshot of that earlier and you want to compare that to what we're working on. So what we'll see in the crease pattern is that the vertical fold down below misses the center one spacing to the right. The fold down and to the right goes straight to the center. And then we're going to alternate those two properties of missing the center by one, like it would be an open hexagon twist, or going straight to the center like it would be a closed hexagon twist as we work our way around. So then the next direction is going to miss the center by one spacing, and the next direction is going to hit it dead on. The next direction is going to miss the center by one space, and the next direction is going to hit it dead on. I'm using red for mountain folds and blue for valley folds. The valley folds are all going to be further out from the center. This is going to be a right-handed twist. So another way to think about it is that the valley folds are going to be around from the mountain folds in the direction that your fingers curl around on your right hand with your thumb up in the air. So with this much in place, I can go ahead and set up all of these pleats. Now, if I wanted to do this without marking on the paper, I would have gone ahead and said, okay, this one that's one space from the center, I can double check that I have that pleat in the right place, even if I don't have my center of the paper marked, because at the corner of the paper, that's going to be one off from the corner. Likewise, the pleats where the mountain goes straight to the center, that mountain also goes straight out to the corner of the paper. And with all of our pleats, always, we want to have both the mountain and the valley folded. We don't want to go around and get all the mountains and then put in the valleys, because that pretty much guarantees that some of our folds are going to come undone as we're putting in the next ones. So I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see more of what I'm doing. I'm working my way around, and it doesn't matter a ton whether I go around this way or around this way. If I work around this way, then I get to lay the layers down on top of what I've already set up, which tends to be a little bit easier to keep in place. But either way, I'm going to get to this kind of platform. And what I'm really aiming for is keeping this big triangle with edges on grid lines, 3 spaces per edge. I'm aiming to keep that big triangle intact as I rotate everything else down. So here I'm still in the same orientation that I was originally, with my vertical coming down, being offset 1 space from the center of my paper. I'm going to be calling these open type pleats and closed type pleats moving forward, because that's how they would interact with the center of an open hexagon or a closed hexagon, respectively. So once I have this set up, I need to dent these little pillows sitting underneath. So I'm going to use either my finger or a bone folder or whatever other flat-ish thing that I have at hand, and dent those little pillows, which allows everything to press straight down flat. So with the setup for this, it's not quite as simple as, or setup for the whole tessellation, that is, not just this twist. It's not quite as simple as having one hexagon and one triangle, but we'll see that there are rules that we can use to remember how the pattern works and then use those rules to continue folding. So first off, hybrid hexagon twist in the center. Second rule is it's going to be tube pleat spacing everywhere. And if you've folded with me before, you'll know that tube pleat spacing means that my next valley fold is 2 spaces away from whatever valley fold is under the existing pleat. This is also 1 space out from the folded mountain. And this pleat that we're looking at here is one of the closed type pleats. So I've got my hybrid hexagon pointing to the right, and I'm working on a pleat coming down and to the right. I've got my valley fold marked. Now we need to know what size of triangle twist goes here. It's either going to be open or closed, depending on the pleat. And in this case, the closed type pleats get the closed triangle twists. Which leaves the open triangle twists for the open type pleats. So we're going closed, closed, open, open. So far, so good. So I'm going to rotate my paper so that I have the next direction of pleat around my hybrid hexagon going in the same orientation that I was holding before. I'm just going to rotate so that's in my right hand. If you're left-handed, you might want to work on it in your left hand instead. And this is a open type pleat. It's coming and outlining the grid triangle, or outlining one edge of it. Doesn't really look like it, but if you lift up, you can see that it does in fact continue along that big triangle. We are again going to see tube pleat spacing. So I'm coming 1 space out from the folded mountain to put my valley, and my triangle twist is going to be on this top plate. It's not going to be on this plate coming from another triangle, because we know that our triangle twists only are on pleats coming from hexagons. And this, even though it looks like a triangle, has 6 pleats and therefore acts like a hexagon. So we're going to have an open triangle twist. Notice the difference between the closed and the open. The closed triangle twist, all 3 of these plates are coming to a single point. The open triangle, we're shifting that down 1 spacing further. So it's outlining a grid triangle. And then when we go to squash, that area is spreading out further to get the open triangle twist. And we can verify that we've done it correctly because the corner of this open triangle twist is going to meet up with the corner of the hybrid hexagon twist. Now we do have a pleat overlap down here, and one of the things that we'll see in further repeats out is that we're going to want to resolve our plate overlaps right away. We're going to want to add a hexagon for every 2 triangles that we add. But for this initial setup around the center, I'm going to choose to keep the new information added to a minimum at a time. So we're just going to go around and do closed triangle, open triangle, then closed triangle. And if this is moving really fast for you, don't worry, this is being recorded. The recording will be available immediately after. And squash the closed triangle. And here it's a little bit harder to see the tube, but we're paying attention to where that valley fold was under the previous triangle to say, okay, yeah, my valley here is 2 spaces away. And then rotating, I can set up another open triangle. Notice this is the tube pleat spacing. And then the 3rd pleat determines what kind of triangle it is. And squash. Again, corner of the open triangle coming to a corner of the hybrid hexagon twist. And rotating, I have another closed triangle going on a closed pleat. Notice in here, the closed pleats are the ones that are kind of tucking up and under. And then rotating, and my final triangle is an open triangle twist. Final for this ring around the center. And squash. Okay. So now I'm going to return us to the same orientation we were in the very beginning. And it's time to start adding some more hexagon twists. We've got these 6 pleat overlaps. You'll notice that this one is slightly different from the others, namely that if I open the pleat overlap from this side, this one opens all the way very easily. And if I were to open this one, I would need to pop out and then really pop out underneath to get that to fully open. We'll leave that one until last, but I specifically chose to go around and put these triangles in the sequence that would lead to the most friendly pleat overlaps. And yes, Chris, we can see the back right now. We're going to be putting all of our twists in on one side of the paper, but here's what the back looks like right now. You can see with the hybrid hexagon twist, it looks like there's only 3 pleats coming out, but then there's 3 more that are coming out 1 spacing away from the center. So it's kind of deceptive that way. So here's our original orientation, like the crease pattern in the beginning. And I'm looking at my copy of the crease pattern and seeing, okay, if I go down into a closed triangle, then I come up into an open hexagon. Another way that I can figure that out from this setup is the fact that there are tube pleats everywhere between every set of twists. There is no spacing that is not tube pleats. And so I can say, hey, up here, if I'm going to have a tube pleat, then I need that valley fold on this grid line. I need my mountain fold right here. And I know this is going to be either an open or a closed hexagon, because in the tiling that we looked at earlier, we never saw two of the same color touching corner to corner. And so I can set up that third pleat, open up the pleat overlap, and then I need to recognize that these three pleats are setting up the start of a puffy hexagon star. We've got two of the points right there. And so I'm going to set up the remaining pleats of the puffy hexagon. I do expect, if you're folding things with hybrid hexagons, that you do have some mastery of the closed and open hexagon twists, which I have other videos for also. So this is the open hexagon puffy star, and we can go ahead and squash. And then we can continue on to another part of the paper. And I'm noticing that this area is getting all kinds of bunched up. There's a bunch of layers on top of each other. I'd rather work in an area that's a bit more open and easy to work with. So I'm actually going to come down here next instead of going around the other way. Rotating around. Since I know that from what I mentioned earlier, all of these triangles go to 3 different hexagons, this must be a closed hexagon twist. And since I know that for all of the hexagons, I'm going to be alternating open, closed, open, closed, open, closed triangles around them, I know that whatever triangle is over here has to be open, because it's on the next pleat around the open hexagon, and this one was closed. So I'm going to have a closed hexagon and an open triangle. I'm going to open up my pleat overlaps, and I want to be really careful here to fully open up. So now I have these 2 mountain folds coming into the center of my closed hexagon. And so I'm going to have a third pleat coming out this way. I know that I'm going to be making an open triangle up here, but for now I'm going to shift the pleat over like it was going to be a closed triangle and lay that 3-way intersection of mountain folds down flat. One of the benefits of working in the hexagons and triangles 6-fold tiling that we're working in is that I can know right off the bat that since my central hexagon was right-handed, all of my hexagons are right-handed and all of my triangles are left-handed. So I don't have to worry about which way each of these pleats are flipping over. I know that they're all going to be right-handed around the hexagons. So with the closed hexagon tower in place, and notice all of these mountain folds are coming into the center, I can bop it, grab it, give it a sharp twist. It really does need to be a fast twist, and don't worry if yours comes out a little crumpled. You can always lift up pleats and smooth stuff out. We'll probably be seeing some crumpled examples from me as we go forward. But this is entirely on grid lines. The closed hexagon is entirely on grid lines. And that allows it to lay down flat without much fuss. So here we have that 3-way intersection, that we saw earlier had to be an open open triangle twist, because we're going open, closed, gotta be an open on that next pleat around this closed hexagon. We can apply the same logic around the open hexagon. So we're going to shift that mountain fold one spacing over, put the valley on the far side, and we get bonus confirmation because we're creating a tube pleat over here. And squash. So you might be a little bit concerned about why do these two triangle corners meet, but these do not. And that's because the triangle twists are not in positions of rotational symmetry. You're not going to see the same thing on three sides of the triangles. In fact, you're specifically going to see three different things on three different sides of each triangle. So rotating around, we've got our next pleat overlap, and here we can apply the alternating rule. As we go around our hybrid hexagon twist, we're going to see alternating open, closed, open, closed, open, closed hexagon twists. So this one has got to be a open hexagon. I also know that I'm going to have tube pleat spacing in here. So I can say the valley goes here, the mountain goes here. I can go ahead and set up my next triangle right away. Notice this gets rid of a pleat overlap. I had that pleat going through here. And if I go ahead and set up that next triangle as a three-way intersection and lay it down flat, it is going to eventually be a closed triangle twist because of the alternation around the closed hexagon. But all I need to know to set it up is that I'm going to have tube pleat spacing and I'm going to lay it down flat. And then coming in here, we want to open up the pleat overlap. And like I mentioned with the closed hexagon twist, with all the mountain folds of the pleats coming to the center of the closed hexagon, with the open hexagon, all of the mountain folds of the pleats are missing the center by one grid spacing. So we can go around, add in all of our pleats for that open hexagon twist, and press to squash. And then our triangle twist, we can verify that it needs to be a closed triangle because look at that, another tube pleat, and press to squash. And rotate, and now we're in the same situation we were in 2 hexagons ago. So it's going to be another closed hexagon. And again, I can go ahead and set up the tube pleat and the three-way intersection for what's going to be a triangle twist and lay that down flat, even though it's going to be an open triangle twist. Notice this next one over is closed, so this one must be open. But I'm laying it down flat so that I don't have that pleat running through things. And then I'm opening up the pleat overlap, and with these 3 mountain folds of pleats coming together all at the same point, it becomes very clear that this needs to be a closed hexagon twist. I do want to say a word of caution, which is that in the next ring around the center, when we're folding more hybrid hexagon twists again, the fact that 3 pleats can come together to a single point is not going to be enough to determine whether the twist is closed versus hybrid. So That's just a word of warning. And so it's much more reliable to say either I'm alternating around and therefore this one must be closed, or this triangle is going to 3 different hexagons and therefore this one must be closed. So now I can bop it and grab it, give it a sharp twist around, wiggle it down until it's all the way flat, and press. And now I have that triangle that I had set up. If I was going to do a closed triangle, that would not be a tube pleat. It needs to be an open triangle twist. We get our nice, lovely tube, and press to squash. Rotating around once again. We're continuing our alternating pattern. So next up is an open hexagon twist, and we can also set up the triangle at tube pleat spacing. So now we have 3 pleats feeding into our new hexagon, and I'm being very careful as I run this pleat down through this dense area that all of the folds in the dense area are fully folded, so that when I run a pleat through, I'm not adding new folds to the grid. And once I have all my open hexagon twists in place, I can flatten out my my hexagon and also flip the plate. This is going to be a closed triangle because, again, we're alternating which triangle we use around each of the hexagons. And rotating once more, we've got a 6th hexagon to add around the central hybrid hexagon. It's going to be a closed hexagon because we just did an open one, so the next one is closed. I'm going to start by opening up some of these pleat overlaps and setting up a 3-way intersection of mountains that's destined to become an open triangle, but we're going to lay it down flat. And then down below, I'm also going to set up a 3-way intersection of mountains. And this one, it's going to be easiest to lay down flat in towards the hexagon that I'm working on. And then we can find the remaining pleats of the closed hexagon twist. This area of the paper is a little bit stressed from how it was in the pleat overlaps earlier. And I'm going to get things as happy as they can be before I bop it, grab it, and give it a sharp twist. Make sure everything, all the folds are actually on grid lines, and press flat. Then this triangle is next to an open triangle, so it's going to be closed, and also it being closed creates a new tube pleat. And up here, this triangle is next to a closed triangle, so it must be open. And also it being open is what creates the tube pleat. So I had mentioned earlier that the streamlined way of folding things is to add 2 triangles and a hexagon approximately at the same time as you work your way around, and that we were working in a slightly different sequence around the very center because that is what allowed me to introduce new information a little bit at a time. So as we start folding further out, we are going to be seeing those two triangles and a hexagon that are added one chunk at a time. So I'm going to first show what the back looks like at this stage. So here we have the hybrid hexagon in the middle. We have these three open hexagons. We have these three closed hexagons. And you can see a couple different equilateral triangles showing up in the pattern. You can see a triangle showing up between the open hexagons, between the closed hexagons. You also see an equilateral triangle between the centers of the three different hexagons in whatever set of them you choose to look at that are close by each other. So that is part of the symmetry conditions that we're working on. For right now, I've got this set of parallel pleats that is headed off to the right. And actually, I'm going to, so this is the original orientation relative to the crease pattern that we saw at the beginning. I'm going to take the set of pleats off to the right, and I'm going to take a look and see what has to be true on this set of pleats. The first thing that I'm looking for is, what are these triangles going to be? Because I know that this pleat's coming from a hexagon, has to go to a triangle. This one's coming from a triangle, has to go to a hexagon. This one's coming from a hexagon, has to go to a triangle. So around this hexagon, I've got closed, open, next one's going to be closed. Around this hexagon, closed, open, next one's going to be closed. So we've got two closed triangles, top and bottom. And I could even go ahead and start setting those up. And I want to notice how this pleat was going to just tuck under here. I want to lift that up. And then I want to lay this triangle down as a three-way intersection so that the pleat that's flipping over is the one going out to the edge. So I'm laying that down. And then up here, I also am going to have my closed triangle twist at tube pleat spacing, sending a pleat into this mess, which I'll go ahead and tell you, this triangle has a closed and an open twist around it. It's going to a hybrid twist. So this closed triangle, again, I want to lay that down as a three-way intersection, flipping the pleat that's going out to the edge. So now I have three pleats coming into a hybrid hexagon twist, and I know from the center that my closed triangle twists are closed pleats of the hybrid. So I can follow those grid lines in, and I have two of these closed triangles, so they meet at the center of the hybrid hexagon twist. I have one open pleat, and here I'm going open, closed. My next one in this direction needs to be open. My next one in this direction needs to be closed. So that's headed straight in to the center. And my final pleat in this direction needs to be open. And again, if you're less familiar with this hybrid hexagon twist, I do have a video all about practicing this twist in particular. So now that the hybrid hexagon twist is set up, I can press to squash. I'm making sure as I'm pressing that those pillows really are indenting in. And then I have these two closed triangle twist that I had set up that I'm going to go ahead and flip those pleats back to squash. And now I'm going to turn to the next set of parallel pleats. And now instead of having 3 pleats, I have 5. So I'm going to start with the one down at the bottom. This is somewhat arbitrary. I might change my mind about what way we're working around in the next ring around the center. But for now, here we are. We're going to work with these 3 pleats first. And the top and bottom ones are coming from hexagons. They're going to have triangles. The middle one is coming from a triangle. It's going to have a hexagon. And specifically, the hexagon it's going to have is the hexagon that pleats from that triangle don't have already, which is the closed hexagon. I can notice that I'm going to need tube pleat spacing for my next triangle twist. And that's going to, instead of tucking under, pop up into the next hexagon twist. This is going to allow me, so this is an open triangle twist that I put in because as we go around, we see closed, must be open. And so that gives me the center of my closed hexagon twist. And now if I try to just flip this pleat over to lay it down flat, that doesn't work. So I need to shift the mountain 1 spacing over and then flip the pleat so it's tucking down under like that. So I still am going to have my tube pleat, but it's more important that the pleat into the new hexagon be in the correct orientation than that the open triangle be set up and ready to squash. From there, I can send my new mountain fold out, hitting the pleat from the hexagon, and make that a 3-way intersection that lays down flat with this pleat that is crossing the next 2 pleats, laying down in the opposite direction of how it would typically lay. This also is eventually going to be an open triangle because here we have open, closed, next one's open. But it's going to wait its turn until the hexagon is squashed. From there, I'm going to set up my remaining pleats, including another one that passes through these 2 other pleats in our original set of 5. So we're going to have, when we're adding in hexagons and triangles around the center, we're going to have 2 pleats that cross whatever other pleats are happening. So with that in place, I'm going to bop it, grab it, give it a sharp twist around so it lays down flat. And now I can come back to my triangles and turn them into open triangle twists. And here we see again that the open triangle corner is coming to the corner of the hybrid hexagon twist. Here also, I'm going to shift my mountain fold 1 spacing over and put the valley on the far side. And even though they're both running through other pleats, we get this nice tube and squash. So here we have a slightly different situation than what we've seen where we had the 3 parallel pleats, adding in 2 triangles and a hexagon, 2 triangles and a hexagon. Here we have more of a overlappy situation. And so we're going to have more pleats already going into whatever hexagon we're going to be doing. And by the way, it's coming off of pleats from these triangles, and both of those have both a closed and an open, but not a hybrid. That's definitely going to be a hybrid twist. So here, I'm going to start by opening the pleat overlap, and then I'm going to say, okay, down here, I have this pleat coming from the closed hexagon. It's going through a triangle and then into the hybrid hexagon. I'm going to have tube pleat spacing for my triangle, and this triangle is going to be closed, open, closed. So I can set up this closed triangle twist with my tube pleat spacing, and then flip the pleat that's heading out to the edge of the paper so that lays down nice and flat for me. Likewise, up above, I'm going to have my tube pleat spacing. So opening this pleat that may be a little bit stuck at first, I'm going to have tube pleat spacing leading into this hybrid hexagon. And I'm just going to go ahead, and before I even worry about whether this is going to be a closed or an open triangle, I know that I want it to lay down flat. So I have the tube pleat spacing, and I'll let the third pleat determine what kind of triangle it is later on. So I've got my two triangles laying down flat, and now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pleats going into my hybrid hexagon. You might be seeing something more like this, maybe like this. We want to pop it out so that that great big triangle is visible. And one way to think about this is that this one's a closed triangle. It's going into the center. This pleat down here is also a closed type and going in to the center. So we've got our closed pleats in these directions. And then the great big open triangle is extending the mountain folds from the open type pleats. And here I'm putting in another closed type pleat as I'm setting up the final open type pleat. And with those all in place, and it is generally easier to spot the hybrid hexagon setup if you do have more pleats in place to start with, which is why I'm recommending starting by setting up the triangles, or at least the three-way intersections for the triangles. And then we can come back. This one, when I flip the pleat, is making a tube when it's a closed twist. And this one, if I flip the pleat, that's not quite close enough, so let's shift it over. Now it's making the tube, and it's an open triangle twist. And we can see that in the alternation around the closed hexagon, around the hybrid hexagon, wherever we want to find that alternation. Or if we just want to go with the tube pleats, that will also work. So now it's time for the next set of parallel pleats because we exhausted the ones we were working on earlier. Now moving over here, we're going to have, let's see, around this triangle, we already have a closed and a hybrid. That means we're headed for an open hexagon. And that's going to be the rule going around here. We're going to have hybrid closed, hybrid open, hybrid closed, hybrid open. And it's going to be this kind of mixed alternation where we see hybrid and then either closed or open alternating. So as we are looking at these three pleats, we can say, okay, I'm going to need a tube plate here. And this is getting suspiciously close to running through the existing triangle twist. I'll say a bit more about that later. And down here, we're also going to need a tube. And I can double check. I did a quick assessment that both of these triangles are going to be closed type triangles because they are immediately around their respective hexagons from this open type triangle. So the triangles are set up, and then we can find the remaining pleats of our open hexagon twist. And once that's set up, we can press from the top to squash. And turn both of these three-way intersections of mountain folds into closed triangle twists. So notice how when I'm adding more around this pattern, I'm not saying, well, the crease pattern says to do this. I'm saying the existing pattern has these rules, and that means that I need X, Y, and Z. So here, I'm looking at this and saying, okay, I need to open up these pleat overlaps for starters, because this is going into a hexagon twist in this area. The triangle pleats from triangles are going into a hexagon always. And I'd like to have more pleats going into this hexagon because around this triangle I have a closed and an open. That means this one's going to be a hybrid. And then I can say, well, up here I need to have a tube plate for that next triangle to feed in. So I can set that up and lay this plate down flat. Down here, I need a tube plate, but I also need to know what kind of triangle that I'm using because this is going to tuck up in, and I can see, okay, here we have closed, open, closed. This is going to be open. So that third plate that's feeding into the hybrid hexagon is going to outline that grid triangle. And to get it to lay flat, the pleat that formed the tube is going to shift over, and we're going to have that tuck underneath. So from there, I can say, okay, this one's a closed type plate, or I can either say these two are closed type plates and are going to the center, or I can say these two are open type plates and outlining the great big triangle. And either of those and both of those together are enough to find the remaining two pleats going into the hybrid hexagon. And I get that to rotate around. It turns out that this three-way intersection isn't tucked all the way underneath, it's just laying along the side. And I can get this hybrid hexagon to lay down flat. And then I can return this triangle down here to its open state, reinstating the tube. And this triangle up here becomes a closed triangle because it's next to this open triangle around these hexagons. Now I've got my new set of parallel pleats. I'm going to start moving a little bit faster because we have seen all of these moves in previous parts of this video. And I'd like to get to the rest of the ring around the center in a moderately reasonable amount of time. So that was setting up an open triangle because this one's closed and I need to alternate. And that is feeding into the center of my closed hexagon twist. Over here, I'm not even worrying about whether that triangle is closed or open. All I need is the tube pleat, and whatever else is happening will happen later. And the way I can tell the difference between this triangle needing to know that it's open or closed and this triangle not needing to know is whether the pleat that I'm referencing the tube from is the one feeding into the hexagon, as it is up here, in which case the third pleat can be whatever it needs to be later, or the pleat that I'm referencing the tube from is not feeding into the hexagon, therefore I need to know where that third pleat that does feed into the hexagon goes. And then rotating down and around, and squash, and then squash each of these triangle twists, which happen to both be open twists. So notice I'm not memorizing the sequence of what twists are open and what twists are closed. I'm problem solving it as I go, saying, okay, here I need a tube pleat, and I also need to know that this is closed because it's the third pleat that feeds into the hexagon. And then laying that down flat. Up here, I just need the tube pleat because that's what's feeding into the hexagon. And then I've got an open twist here, closed twist here, open twist goes to open pleat, closed twist goes to closed pleat, and I can pattern match to find the rest of my hybrid hexagon pleats. Yes, I did do that rather quickly. That's why I gave the disclaimer earlier about moving faster this time. And here we have a closed triangle, and we've got closed, open, closed, must be open. And next set of parallel pleats. So here I've got a hybrid and a closed hexagon. This must be feeding into an open hexagon. And this same logic applies whether I'm working from the bottom of the set of parallel pleats up or the top of a set of parallel pleats down. I'm still looking for two triangles and a hexagon to add. And actually, I'll go ahead and demonstrate that with the next set of parallel pleats, that I can work from the opposite end of it. And still get all of my same twists. So next up is a hybrid hexagon. We've got a closed and open. On the far side of this triangle, we need a hybrid. Same argument goes for these hexagons around this triangle. And because I've practiced enough hybrid hexagon twists, I can see where the rest of it is going to go from 2 pleats that I know are either closed or open type. So these pleats coming from the open triangle and the closed triangle are enough for me to see the whole hybrid hexagon. I don't expect that that would be the case until you've folded, I don't know, 100 of them. So don't beat yourself up about it. And then I need to match the tube and rotate and match the tube. And here I said I would work the set of parallel pleats from the opposite end. So instead of starting down here, I'm going to start up here. And that's not a problem. I am going to have this pleat at tube plate spacing coming down into my new twist. My new twist is not closed or hybrid, therefore it's open. And you'll notice that when I'm folding the way that I'm comfortable with, I didn't go and say, oh, this is tube pleat spacing, this is going to be an open triangle, therefore the pleat goes here. I said, I have 2 pleats going into an open hexagon, therefore the 3rd pleat is here. So there's multiple ways to get at the same information, especially once you're comfortable with these hexagon twists. And then this triangle is open, and this one is also open. And I'm not so concerned about reordering pleat overlaps in this particular pattern because all of the twists are on the same side. Usually when we're looking at reordering overlaps, it's because there are twists on, because the next twist is going to be on the opposite side of the paper. But with everything on the same side with fairly moderate spacing, I'm really not concerned with the ordering of my overlaps. And here again, I set up the triangle coming down into my hybrid hexagon. And with that and these 2 pleats that were already coming into the hybrid hexagon, I was able to recognize the rest of the shape and get that to come into place. And again, a reminder, this level of speed is not something that you will have your first maybe dozen times folding this pattern. This is like the origami tessellations and recognizing the twists. This is something that I've been working on for years. Folding hundreds of different patterns. So it's not going to be something that comes overnight. But once you have built up the expertise, it can go remarkably quickly. And so now I have my closed hexagon twist. I've got that hybrid and an open and another hybrid, all of which are saying I need a closed hexagon in the middle. And then closed triangle makes the tube. And over here, open triangle makes the tube. So you can really work these stripes from either direction, like the sets of parallel pleats. And this is as much as we're going to be able to get with full twists on this 48 fold grid. One of the ways that this pattern looks pretty nice on a full grid is with a perpendicular grid. So notice that these folds are perpendicular to the edges of the paper. That's because I set my grid up like that from the beginning. I didn't cut it at the end. And this pattern aligns pretty nicely on that amount of grid. I'm pretty sure this particular folding was on 64 divisions, counting from on the line that goes through the center from one side to the other. So I'm going to have a video on these perpendicular grids at some point fairly soon. And I encourage you to apply these rules for this pattern that I taught you, that when we have the hybrid hexagon, then around or on the pleats that are acting open in the hybrid, we have open twists. On the pleats that are acting closed, we have closed twists. These are alternating as we go around. And then the thing that even I needed the crease pattern for is which pair of those led to an open versus a closed twist. But like I mentioned earlier, you can use the fact that we have tube pleat spacing everywhere to dictate which of those it's going to be. And then we can propagate out, saying every triangle has 3 different hexagons around it. Every hexagon has alternating triangles around it. And those are the rules. And tube pleat spacing everywhere. Those are the rules for the hybrid hexagon weave. So happy folding, everyone. I hope you enjoy folding this pattern with even more repeats if you want, because you know all the rules, you know the techniques for doing more repeats around the center. Even when we have more parallel pleats. So here on each side, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once you do those 5, then the next you'll see 7. You're going to have 2 pleats crossing across the remainder of the set of parallel pleats, and you'll work your way across from one side to the other. And that is a general strategy, then following the rules for the triangles and for the hexagons. That's a general strategy for getting as much of this pattern as you want. So happy folding. You're welcome, Chris. Glad you could join live, and see you for the next live stream